So welcome to MCW Prep. This is the pre-college program of the Music Conservatory of Westchester in White Plains, New York. It's for high school students who, upon graduation from high school, may be interested in attending one of the top college conservatories or university music schools in preparation for a possible career as a professional musician. One or more years of instruction from active world-class musicians may be the key to these students being admitted to the school of their choice. So we're proud to be able to offer this opportunity. This is our chance to introduce some of our faculty to the community and for all of us to gain some insights into how they establish themselves as among the most respected professional musicians in the country and around the world. My name is Douglas Bish. I'm the Dean of Students and Faculty at the Music Conservatory of Westchester, and I would like to introduce some of our faculty members that are joining us on this Zoom meeting. I'll do this in opera score order, starting with Mindy Kaufman, who's flutist and principal piccolo with the New York Philharmonic. Not joining us today, but our clarinet teacher, Pavel Vanitsky, who's a clarinetist with the New York Philharmonic. On this meeting, Korliss Uecker, soprano with the Metropolitan Opera. Not here yet, but hopefully joining us soon, Stefan Stefanovsky, a bass with the Metropolitan Opera. Here with us today, Ani Kavafian, violinist with the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center and professor of violin at Yale University. Rebecca Young, who is associate principal violist with the New York Philharmonic. And finally, at the bottom of the score, Jerry Grossman, principal cellist with the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. We also will have a faculty member from Broadway to be announced very soon, and that person will also be working with doing master classes with the voice students in the program. So thank you to each of you for being here. So a question I'd like everyone to address, when did you begin seriously studying your instrument or voice? I guess starting with the top, Mindy, we see an M there for you, but would you answer that for us? How did you get started?
Unpin. Okay. Hi, Doug. Well, I started, first I started in public school, which was great. And then I was playing piano and I had auditioned for the conservatory. And then my piano teacher later, who was the director of the school, later found out that I played the flute. So I auditioned on the flute. And at this point, I'm about 12 years old. And that was the beginning of my flute career at the conservatory. So I spent the next 5 years studying flute at the conservatory, and I had the two most wonderful flute teachers and my piano teacher. And not only that, but I took theory. I took theory with Wilma Mackover. Some of you may know that name. She was. Her son is a very well-known musician, Todd Mackover. She was also my Girl Scout troop leader, so I had a lot of crossovers between school and music.
Okay, Korliss.
Hello. I'm from North Dakota. We don't have conservatories there. Actually, there's not one still. And I was gifted, and I started on the flute, and then because I was very good at it, they took my flute away and gave me a bassoon, and said, "You will play this now." And I played the piano, not amazingly well, but that was really important part of my musical training. And then I watched Bugs Bunny and heard opera. Since when you think of it, there really wasn't Wi-Fi, NPR. It was pretty brutally without culture. So we would go up to Winnipeg to receive culture, go to the opera, hear an actual orchestra, see the ballet. It was about a 10-hour trip, so we didn't do it often. And I'd go to Minneapolis, which was 12 hours. I'm a registered nurse, thank God, especially in current circumstances. So I got my Bachelor of Science degree at the University of North Dakota and also a music degree. And then I worked as a nurse in New York at Presbyterian while I went to the Juilliard School and got a bachelor's and a master's there. And then I stopped nursing after 13 years and transitioned into my music career, where I've been, except now I'm back looking for a nursing position. Since we don't know, my concerts, as all of our concerts were, rescheduled or to be determined or whatever. So bring on the bedpans.
Whoa.
I actually I've been doing lectures, though I'm doing one at the San Francisco Conservatory next month, and I did one recently with something called the Collaborative Piano Institute, which is something that Martin Katz is involved with. And the lecture is about careers that go very nicely with music careers that require little education or training. So what's that?
Let us know when that is.
And it's careers that you can get benefits, which as adjuncts, it's very difficult. So I just wanted to add that that's something I'm doing now that I've been doing for many years, giving these kinds of lectures and really doing a lot of research about how much education is needed to be a phlebotomist or a vet tech. That's my favorite. I would like to be a vet tech or a veterinarian. But anyway, so the vet tech and these kinds of things. That's just a little sideline, but related to music very much, because it has to be flexible so we can do rehearsals and have our lives. So that's something I bring to the prep program right now. Just kind of poke around with these kids and see what their other interests are besides music, and spend a few minutes discussing that at lessons.
Yeah. Ani, what got you started?
Well, I actually was born into a very musical family. Both of my parents were professional musicians, and they met in the Istanbul State Symphony. So they were, and in turn, they had parents that were musical. So I started piano lessons at the age of 3 with my aunt. And then when we came to this country, I was born in Istanbul. And when we came to this country, my school needed string players. So they gave me a $15 scholarship to study a string instrument. My mother was a violinist, so I picked the violin, and we found a teacher that came to our house for 5 lessons. $15 went for 5 lessons at that time. The guy came to our house and taught me violin, and basically that was how I transitioned into the violin. I kept up both of them for a while, went to Interlochen, the National Music Camp in Michigan, and I think my best thing that I did with both instruments was that in 1 year I won the concerto competition on piano and then violin. So after that happened, I thought, okay, I can just concentrate on the violin now. And I did. Went to Juilliard and studied with Ivan Galamian for 8 years. I got what they called a Master of Science degree at that point, after the bachelor's. And then I started really doing a lot of teaching. I went a few years into the doctoral program there, but I was really playing a little bit too many times, so it was hard to keep up the doctoral program there. I think my start really was with winning a couple of competitions, the one, Concert Artists Guild 1 year, and then Young Concert Artists, which now I'm the president of the Alumni Association. I love that group, and that's really how I started the career. I transitioned into the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center by auditioning for Charles Wadsworth. It was the best job, and I'm still with them after all these years. And my real love of music really came with the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center.
Okay. All right, Becky, what got you started and where did you go to school?
I don't remember. No, I started, let's see, when I was about 2.5, my mother took me to the young people's concerts with Leonard Bernstein conducting, and I had a picture of it here somewhere with a little picture. It's like a papal blessing of Bernstein backstage with his hand on my head and my brother's head. And anyway, I went to them for a bunch of years, and my mom said I used to roll up programs and put one over here and one over here and just pretend I was playing violin. And when I was about 4, I asked her if I said I wanted to play violin, and she said, "Don't you want to play piano?" And I said, "No, I want to do this." So she found me a teacher, Irving Klein in Colonia, New Jersey, and he used to give me cookies and Coke. And I had these lessons, and then I auditioned for pre-college Juilliard when I was 8 and didn't get in, but they said, "Oh, she has talent," so they sent me to a teacher, Sally Thomas, and she said, "Here, you go to my teacher." Was it your teacher too? Well, I went to her. She sent me to, that was Annie who was saying, "Yes, I did it, Annie." And then I said, I went to her assistant, who was Fanny Chase. And Fanny Chase taught me every bit of technique that I know. And after that, I had viola teachers, but any bit of musicianship that I gained was from people I played with and from coaches. For instance, at Tanglewood, I went to Tanglewood for 3 years. And I had, Julius Levine, and I had Gil Kalish, and I had, there were too many to name. Rosnick, and a whole bunch of people. Anyway, it was so wonderful. And from some of the conductors, we had Leonard Bernstein, and we had, the first time I saw Kurt Mazur was there. I was 19 years old, and he was amazing musically, and that was that. And so I went to pre-college. I re-auditioned when I was 13, and I went to studied. At that point, I was kind of interested in medicine, actually. And I would bring, my dad was a doctor, and when I went to Meadowmount, that was like a musician's concentration camp. And when we would take our breaks, I would take my father's Gray's Anatomy, and I took it with me, and then I would open it up, and I would make these drawings and diagrams and things. And then I was bored at that point. My teacher was a nice man, but I was kind of bored, and I thought, all right, I'll be a doctor. And then somebody suggested, "Why don't you play viola?" I was in pre-college, and they said, "Why don't you play viola? We need violists anyway. And you're tall, you have long arms." And I said, "All right, I'll try it." And I did. And that was that. And then I played viola for 9 months in the pre-college, then auditioned for the upper school. And at the beginning of my senior year at Juilliard, I auditioned for the Philharmonic. And that was that. So I've been there for about 21 years. And I love Korliss's story. And Korliss, when this is done, I'm calling you up. I want to hear all about other things. I tell that to students too, that music is wonderful, but it's unless you're only playing chamber music, and you're the only person on your part, and you can you can create the music. You're part of the music making. When you're in an orchestra, if you're inspired by the people around you and the conductor and stuff, you can remain, you love what you're doing. But there are times where you think, I want to do something else. This is not enough. So it's you have to be old for it not to be enough. And whoever's watching at your stage of the game, should be consuming you. That's what you want to do. But I think you're a more interesting, not just a more interesting human being and artist, but not just a more interesting artist, but a more interesting human being. If there are other things in your life that you're creating and learning all the time, as what you would do. You got to learn this, and then you learn new pieces, and you learn different techniques, and you play here and you play there. It's the same thing when you do something else. It's like, oh my gosh, there's more to life than just this. It's pretty cool. So I'm still in that phase. And I also, and then I'll shut up. I well, it's a long story, but I'll make it quick, that they asked me to be the host of the very young people's concerts at the Philharmonic, which started out to be, in theory, a very small role, but it kind of has taken over my life, and I absolutely love it. And that's teaching, and that's creating, and that's trying to make music fun for all ages. That's what's keeping me relatively sane during this COVID thing, is creating, and just trying to learn how to do the computer stuff now so I can put more out. That's it.
Very good. Good. Jerry.
Yeah, well, I started my lessons. I had two older brothers who played, 6 and 9 years older. They played the violin and the piano, respectively, and we all took our lessons at a school which is not unlike the Westchester Conservatory. It was the Langy School of Music in Cambridge, Mass. I happened to grow up in Cambridge, not associated with any of the academia there, but I could walk to the Langy School. It was a very small neighborhood music school, smaller than Westchester, and but it was lovely, and it was in a lovely old building. It has now blossomed into a larger institution associated with Bard College. But when I started there, I would just go for my piano lessons with Mrs. Roberts, and there's a room named after her now. And I started on the piano, but I didn't take to it. I found it a little too hard for me to read 2 lines at once. It was like, how do people do this? It was over my head. But my father, my father, who was an amateur violinist, a nice, good amateur violinist, and there was music in the house all day, every day. And my big brother's playing. So my father said, well, you could play the cello. We'll have a piano trio. It'll be violin, piano, and cello. And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. I didn't have a clue what a cello was. And here I am, I'm 7, 8 years old. I still wasn't sure what a cello really was. And they brought me to my first lesson. I was in 4th grade. And they opened the door, and my teacher, Mrs. Rosen, was there. And they had a cello for me lined up. And I remember getting all wide-eyed and looking at it and thinking, so that's what a cello is, right? So anyway, from there, I guess I took to it pretty easily. I wasn't passionate about it. I went my whole 2nd year of lessons without taking the cello out of the case. I'm not proud of that, but here I am talking about it, so I guess maybe I am proud of that, because I flourished in spite of it. After that year, things picked up a little. When I was about 13 or 14, I really started to love playing the cello and playing music. 2 important things happened with friends of my older brother. He was in graduate school, or these guys were in graduate school. My brother had met them through music camp, and they didn't know each other, but that doesn't matter. But one friend, a man named Michael Haber, a very fine cellist who has been teaching in Akron all these years, Akron, Ohio, he needed a place to store some stuff over the summer. And among the things he stored in our house, where I grew up, was a big box of cello music. And I was able to just dive into this box of music, and again, wide eyes, like, look at this, a sonata by Brahms, who knew, right? And I took it out. And there's a lot, big, deep pile of music. And then my brother had another friend who was an amateur pianist who needed a piano to play on, and he was about 23 years old, and I was 13. This was after 8th grade. And Steve Leeds was his name. And he would come over to use our piano. And he felt guilty about using our piano, so he would indulge me, the kid, by sitting down and playing through this box of music with me. So that was the summer that I caught fire playing music. And from then on, you couldn't tear me away from either the phonograph or the cello. It was... I fell under the spell of Ben Zander, who is still up in Boston conducting, and he remains to this day one of the great influences of my life. I had apparently good training because I didn't seem to have too many bad habits that needed to be undone by the time I got to college. I went to the Curtis Institute of Music and studied with David Sawyer and the Guarneri Quartet. I went to Marlborough. I was there with Annie. And then my first job making a living playing music was in the New York Philharmonic. But it didn't suit me because I was more interested in chamber music. So after 2 years in my mid-20s, I actually, much to my father's dismay, both my parents' dismay, I quit the New York Philharmonic. I don't recommend anybody doing anything like that now. And then I freelanced for 8 years Playing all over town, all the usual things, the Brooklyn Philharmonic in New York, the Opera Orchestra of New York. I subbed in the City Ballet. I did all this stuff. And that wasn't satisfying either because, you're scrounging around trying to make ends meet. So I said, I'm going to get myself a real job again. So in my mid-30s, I auditioned for the Chicago Symphony. And then 2 years later, the opening came up for principal cello at the Metropolitan Opera. And, I won those auditions. And I really have to say, I get asked by students a lot, how do you win these auditions? You've done it 3 times now. How do you do it? And the answer I give is, I practice like as if my life depends on it for a long time before the audition. And I said, well, how do you play? What approach do you take to the excerpts? And you be the guy who plays the most beautifully that day, and don't worry about being the guy who nails all the notes and all that. Be the person who loves the music the most and shows that. And it's about loving the music and sharing the music. So even when you're behind a screen playing these orchestral excerpts, you have to play these melodies and passages as if they're the most amazing things ever, and they are the most amazing things ever written. So that's sort of that's me in a nutshell.
By implication, the word that comes to mind the most in everything I've heard so far is there's been some practice involved.
Oh yeah.
About how much would you say you have you practiced when you were in school? How much do you feel? Let's say pretend that everybody's positions were completely intact now, and you were going to rehearsals and playing concerts every week. In that situation, how much would you be practicing now compared with school and in current? Ani?
Well, for me, if I'm teaching at the same time and rehearsing with people, practicing came third to the teaching and the rehearsals. But I tried always to get in a minimum even now, 2 hours. But when I was not teaching, when I was practicing like crazy, I've done many times as many as 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Becky, how about you?
7 and 8. Wow. I don't think I ever did that my entire life. I've done 7 and 8 hours of playing, but not practicing. I remember being in school, and I had one roommate who practiced incessantly, and it seemed to be the same excerpt, the same etude over and over and over. And I remember thinking, if I had to practice that much, I wouldn't be doing this. But I would say when I was auditioning for the Philharmonic, for a big job, I did 4 hours a day, and that seemed like a lot to me. And right now, in theory, I would be doing 2 hours a day. Sometimes it's hard. My son just got married, so I've been putting together a wedding, and that was, but I would do a couple hours a day. And listen, even if you can sometimes I think doing, breaking it up and doing an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening is better. It's very hard when you have a real life, when you have kids and dogs and commutes and teaching and all those kind of things, to find any kind of time. But in theory, if you guys have if you have a lesson and you go, I used to say, okay, I have no lesson, I'm done for the day. Don't do that. The best thing is to go home and just take out everything you just learned and go through it. All right. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
It actually might stick.
Yeah. And then it can stick. Then you can take the rest of the week off. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, look, if I can do an hour right now, I'm very happy. If I can do 2 hours, then I'm beyond happy.
So, Korliss, the demands, I would imagine, for a singer physically are different than the rest of us, than instrumentalists. What did practice mean to you when you were an up-and-coming musician, and what does it mean now to be able to keep the instrument in shape?
I think that practice, I lived with 4 different cellists, all ladies, and I'm aware of the string thing, and I lived with a pianist, and it's really very different. But in our practice is translation. I mean, it's really the work of what we do. So translation, the phoneticizing everything, and working with your text and conducting your music with your text and understanding it. And then, of course, you've got 6 languages. And so there's always language study. And, I'll frequently go to Alliance Française or the Goethe House or, depending on where I'm going to be the next season, and if I have to brush that language up and get it a little bit, conversational. So language work and hardcore IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet work, and then the vocal work, which definitely we can't do if you can break it up. These years since we've been here, and I would work usually in the afternoons with my voice. And mornings were, and then there's business, the business aspect of what we do, which I'm a freelancer and always have been. So I will spend certainly 2 hours a day on business, follow-ups, projected projects. And I'm back at it now, planning a concert at an amphitheater with, masking. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's what I've done with my voice. So I would say between when I'm getting ready to do a big role, then it's more practicing perhaps, and then coaching. You work with the pianist as you get ready to perform. So you're off book, and then there's memorizing. It's just a different thing. And, study.
If I could add something about your practice regime, one thing that Korliss does that I have never done, well, not never, but not to the extent, Korliss religiously warms up her voice before she starts singing any music. I've never heard her just sort of walk into the room and start singing. She always has a routine that I've heard a lot. That is much more extensive than any warm-up I've ever done. So that's kind of
interesting.
A difference between what I think probably all singers must do because they have to protect their bodies and their vocal cords, these tiny little things in their throat, and make sure that they don't do any harm. First, do no harm is what I always say about sopranos.
We split up like Becky said, with the actual vocal part. And if you have a rehearsal or an opera run through, then you don't do other things that day. If you're singing opera, you only do the opera performances and rehearsals. You try not to have chamber music and orchestral rehearsals during that time if possible. It's pretty demanding. So
I think also as a student, your practice and your warm up is really learning a lot about accuracy and warming up and getting into really good habits, because as you get older, we're really athletes. These are our muscles that we're using, and as you get older, they're older muscles. And for me, I never used to warm up. I mean, for a long time I did, and I took it for granted, and I got the Philharmonic, and I remember I was having some kind of arm issue, and my stand partner said to me, well, do you warm up? And I thought, oh yeah, I guess I haven't been warming up for a while. And I started doing stuff and it went away. It's like you have back issues, you start doing core work so that then it strengthens the muscles around you and then you feel better. But as you get older, these muscles are, like I said, older, and I find I have to warm up or I'm not going to be, I mean, I can play, it's just, it sounds not so, well, feels not so great. I mean, I have to work too hard to make it sound good. So it's worth warming up.
Totally agree.
Certainly.
If you have no time at all, and very little time, let's say, for one reason or another, I think at least you should go through an etude of some sort slowly. I've been doing a lot of road day lately. My sister and I are in the road day world right now. And I think it's really, really important to warm up even before you touch the instrument. You know, we all get injuries here and there or pains in the arms and things like that. And we worked with a woman named Carol Johnson, who was amazing, who taught us how to warm up your arms and hands, even if you have just 2 minutes. You have to do something or else you could hurt yourself. I could never do 7-8 hours now, by the way. My muscles are not trained for that anymore.
Well, I had a tear in my arm. I was out of work for 5 or 6 months. And it's about 1.5 years ago, and it took a long time to get back. And what was interesting was I was very conscious of being careful about this. And in the meantime, the vibrato had gone and it was a wow, wow. So I was working really hard to get this back. And I strained the heck out of this arm. And that's just now behaving itself. I mean, it took a really long time. So yeah, that physical stuff is super important. I don't even know them, but you learn once you get injured, you learn how to take care of yourself. So maybe we could do something along those lines too.
It's sort of related to this. One of history's greatest cellists, Pablo Casals, who was one of the founders of the Music Conservatory 90 years ago, at the height of his career, said that every day when he woke up, he had to reteach himself how to play the cello. Jerry, does that make sense to you as something in your practice?
Well, when I pick up the cello every day, it pretty much comes back to me. Casals there was a wonderful story about him practicing at the age of 90, let's say. And somebody says, "What are you doing, maestro?" He says, "Well, practicing." He says, "Well, why do you practice now?" He says, "I'm starting to notice some improvement." I love that story, apocryphal perhaps. Practicing when you're young is so important. I agree with Becky. We're athletes. We are athletes of the little muscles of our hands, and we need to train ourselves as much as we can as young as possible. Like learning a language. Also, the younger you are when you study a language, the more likely it is that it's going to stick. And it's the same with our playing. I never did the 8-hour thing that Annie's talking about. I never practiced all that much. I want to draw a distinction between practicing and playing and fooling around and having fun playing and working. These are all different modes of having your instrument in your hands. And practicing, I think it's essential that practicing be done consciously, that you can practice fewer hours if you practice with, mindfully, I guess is the word that people use now. You pay attention. What I tell my students is, they say, "How do you practice, Mr. Grossman?" I say, 2 things: slow down and pay attention. And if you do that, you won't need to play so many hours. The question of how many hours a day do you practice, well, how well do you practice is a better question, I think. And then after high school, high school, the demands on kids in high school nowadays is, holy cow. I just watched my daughter go through high school and was like, whoa, I couldn't do all that work, right? But somehow I managed to find enough time in high school to practice enough hours to become proficient on the cello. And then when I went to Curtis, then, chamber music is always my first love, so I would spend every spare minute I had, if I wasn't listening to music, I was getting together with my friends and reading string quartets for fun, because that's all I ever wanted to do all day, every day. And that that pushed forward my playing in a way, but it was not disciplined practicing. It was fun string quartet playing. The disciplined practicing, I wish I had done a little more of. But now when I practice, it's always for a purpose, where I have something I need to know or something I need to learn, or I have a solo in an opera coming up and, oh my God, I haven't played that opera for 7 years. I better brush up on that solo. It goes up to a high E, right? So in the Metropolitan Opera, you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of 4,000 people. So that's when I do my practicing, is for those events. But otherwise, nowadays, I don't practice all that much. Of course, with the pandemic,
Jerry has a goal, though, if I may say.
What?
Your goal is to sound like Jerry Grossman.
Yeah.
To continue to sound like Jerry Grossman.
Right. So far, so good. In the slow music. The fast stuff, I've kind of fallen off the rails a little bit.
I always shout down, it sounds like Jerry Grossman. He said, yeah, he's in here.
I can still, it's still working.
I'd be happy to sound like Jerry Grossman. That's pretty good.
Oh, you sound like Becky Young. That's fine with me.
I have to say that it took many years. I don't know how many years. 20, maybe, being in the Philharmonic. I've been there now. I think I completed 34 years in the Philharmonic. But anyway, a really long time before I realized that playing in the orchestra used to be, okay, well, we rehearse 2.5 hours in the morning and then 2 hours in the afternoon. That's 5 hours of playing. But if you take away the breaks, so 4 hours of playing.
Yeah.
and that's enough. And after a whole bunch of just playing and not practicing, these are like practically useless. When I mean, you're fine for the orchestra. I go and I fit in with 12 other violas and it's fine. And all of a sudden I had to play chamber music and I couldn't understand why I had to work so hard to get to, practice that kind of stuff. Then something came up. I don't know. I was playing a sonata or something like this, and I had to play my own music, or Bach, and it was also that's not chamber music. It's complete. They're different levels. I mean, so orchestra, you're fitting with a whole bunch of people. Chamber music, you're one on a part. It's demanding, and it's really important that you practice your part, and then you're in shape. And then there's solo playing where you can't hide behind anybody. You can't. It's not like once in a while you get a solo, or they're different demands, but it's also different levels of practice and focus. And Jerry, I have to say what you said. Concentrate when you're practicing. And I've learned also over the years, nobody taught me how to practice. And I think it's a very helpful thing to help your students how to practice. And one thing, turn off the TV. Can't watch CNN when you're practicing. I never had to.
When I was in the Philharmonic, one tour we did, I was Gerard Schwartz was my roommate. And Jerry Schwartz is a fine conductor now. I don't know if he ever picks up a trumpet anymore, but he was the first trumpet player in the Philharmonic back then, and he was a great trumpet player. I mean, he was, ask any trumpet player. He could really, really do it. And we're lying there, and we get in the hotel room. We take out his trumpet. He's lying on the bed with his trumpet. He turns on the TV, and he's going through his warm-up stuff. And I'm like, what the heck? How did he do that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Doug, I threw something important.
It takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
Was that Korliss?
I was just going to say another part of, it's not exactly practice, but it is for us. And I think for you all also, and with my students at Westchester and outside, we usually spend a few minutes doing some Alexander or some yoga. So that, and also for me, acupuncture and, supportive methods. And if you count in your week, not recently, these last months, but a normal week, who you see, your practitioners that assist you in remaining healthy, there's quite a little group. And I think the youngsters, at least at Juilliard, that's where I got my Alexander start. And that door opened all those years ago, but something a little unusual that then allowed me to really get into yoga and experience my body and keeping this, but to have this relaxed, literally the whole instrument has to be relaxed. The legs, the back, everything.
Well, this sort of ties in, since all of you have a role with us as faculty members. What part has teaching played in your career? Ani, we'll start with you. I mean, you've had a teaching career that most music teachers would certainly aspire to. With Yale, I've heard some of your students. Obviously, you're committed to teaching. With that, in addition to that, what part has teaching played for you?
Well, I think teaching has actually made me a better player. So by voicing and understanding what other students are doing, you sort of teach yourself as well, which is so great because without someone watching you or doing, you have to sort of do it on your own. And when you talk about it, you actually learn innately how things should work with you. So I think teaching has been incredibly important to me. And yes, Doug, I am incredibly devoted to my students. My husband thinks too much, but I think it's great. I love my kids, and I do have some incredible students at Yale for sure. Ever since they made that program free to the students, it's the graduate program there. I'm teaching there quite a lot. I've just become the head of the string division there. So right now I feel, that is my future. I do play still a lot, but I think teaching is the way to go for me. And it's, as I said, it's made me better as a violinist.
Becky, how about you?
Well, I was on the faculty at Manhattan for a little while, and then I had a kid, and then another kid, and then another kid, and with the commute and the, like I said, I'm the host of the Very Young People's Concerts, and I do chamber music and the full-time orchestra job, and it's right now I'm not on faculty. I get lots of people call and say, I'm auditioning for someplace. Can you help prepare me for something? Because I know nothing better than I know orchestral music, you know. So I do a lot of teaching that way, and have had a few private students through the years. But like Annie, I always feel like I'm learning almost as much as I'm teaching, if not, you know, more. It's kind of profound. And in the moments when I am teaching on faculty at, I did something. It doesn't matter what the program was. I think it was up at Mount Holyoke or something. And I remember I had student, because normally it's one student here, one student there. And not like 5 or 6 students in a row, but this particular time it was. And I found out, I thought I should write a book, because there are these just basics that I found from one student to the next student to the next student. Everybody had very similar issues. There are lots of tiny different nuances that we teach and that we all have to do, and adjustments and you know, posture and whatever your technique is. And it's kind of profound how different and how similar the issues can be between different students. So anyway, I love to do it, and I've said for years, if I didn't have my job, I would, and even, you know, if I could switch over to teach. And now look, Philharmonic's not working. We're not working for who knows how long. Right now, we're definitely officially out till January, but it could be until next September. A year from September. So, and who knows, even beyond that. So I'm looking forward to teaching and looking for more.
Very good. Korliss.
Teaching, yes. So I did not teach until the last 10 years. I was, I guess, you know, raising a child and taking care of things and working at the Met and traveling and so on. So it's been really incredible. But I would call myself an very experienced performer, and not a new teacher. No, I've had 10 years, so I've learned a lot. I think it's amazing, and I think that you all are correct. I'm a better singer for it. Definitely. My singing, I think, took it improved in the last 10 years because of my teaching. So I'm very excited about teaching, and I'm looking at now teaching in situations where the students are college age also. I'm looking at some college programs and conservatory programs to teach at. I'm looking forward to that.
I think one of the benefits with a program like ours, where students can come and work with teachers like you, is they're not just benefiting from your expertise, but in a way they're benefiting from the expertise of the people that you studied with. That whole legacy of teachers that sometimes goes all the way back.
Yes.
Jerry, in your case,
Yeah.
you had that sort of experience.
I do have that experience, and that's one of my favorite aspects of teaching. Is the sharing of the, you know, I was so fortunate, and Annie will bear me out on this, that we are from a generation where our teachers were the refugees from World War II Europe, many of them. And they all had funny accents that we could imitate, but they were great musicians and fascinating people, and we really benefited from working with them when we were young. So I love telling stories to students about those people and telling them about playing for Pablo Casals when I was 20 and Don Pablo was 95, things like that. But teaching for me, you know, I've never taught, I've never really consistently taught at a college or anywhere. I teach every summer, at Kneisel Hall, which is in Blue Hill, Maine. It's a very high, now it's become a very high level, all scholarship summer chamber music school. So although I do give cello lessons there to these very talented kids, I also mostly coach chamber music and perform chamber music, which is a great balance to my life playing opera all day, every day, which can get pretty exhausting. So largely because of my job at the opera, I never pursued any teaching outside of that. However, I do have a lot of people calling me up asking to play the excerpts and to help them get into an audition and get through an audition. I do a lot of that. And Annie, your point about how teaching has helped you figure things out for yourself, that's been very true for me as well. Even though when I was younger, I taught. The first teaching I ever did, I think, was at SUNY Binghamton for a couple of years. I was an adjunct teacher of cello. I was in my late 20s, and I'd go up there, nervous as hell because I didn't think I actually knew what I was doing, and I probably didn't. But it was the first time that I had the experience sitting across from someone and trying to explain to them, no, don't do it like this, do it like this, right? And as I picked away at people's habits and observed what people were doing, quote, wrong, I would say, oh my God, I'm doing that too. And then, and then it became like, oh my God, you can't, it's easy to be a hypocrite when you're a teacher, isn't it? You have to really be. The other thing what I do love about teaching is a personal connection with these young people, who are so dear and so, they run the gamut. There's a wide variety of personalities that you get to work with. But when you get some student, when you make a point about music and you see the light bulb go on above their head and they get it, you go home practically in tears of joy because it's so amazing. And Korliss will bear me out on this. When I go to Kneisel Hall, I started teaching there when I was hired there. This is also more than 30 years ago, because I wanted to play. I wanted to play chamber music with Seymour Lipkin, which I got to do, which was great. But the teaching part, I was a little resistant to because that wasn't what I was. So I would have to go off and teach for 5 hours one day. And I said, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm so tired. And I just played a concert last night. No, teaching. And then after 5 hours of teaching, I would come home and say, wow, I was great today. I taught those kids so much stuff. I'd be bubbling with enthusiasm about what had just happened. So it's interesting that the teaching is a learning experience for us as well, and that's what's great about it.
Becky, you were very young when you made a decision that you wanted to someday be a member of the New York Philharmonic. So let's say a sophomore in high school now that aspires to the same sort of career. What should they be really focusing on right now to be able to make that a possibility for themselves?
Right now,
what should they be doing as a high school student? What's the most important thing for them?
Well, I'll just tell you my experience because that's all I can speak from, which is right now in the country, in different places, there are orchestral programs that can prepare people and give them, audition technique and whatever that means. However, when I auditioned, I was 20 when I got in the Philharmonic. I didn't have any of that. I mean, my teacher had an excerpt class, but that just meant put on the record. I mean, you guys wouldn't know what this is, but a record is this black thing and it's round and you put it on. Anyway, you listen to the music and you take your part and you look at, it wasn't even scoring. It was just like, look at your part and listen to it and see how it, and I used to actually put the record on at my house and play along with the record. And I thought that was the most fun. I was one of the weird kids that loved playing in orchestra rather than wanting to be a soloist. Everybody else wanted to be a soloist. I just wanted to play orchestra stuff at the time. And so I learned the piece like it was in any other piece. You've got to be the best. And one of the things I tell my students is that you have to, because from my experience, all right, so I actually went to my teacher when I was a sophomore in high school, and remember I graduated, wait a minute, I was a sophomore in college. I graduated high school a year early, so I would have been like freshman age. And my teacher said, there's an opening in the Chicago Symphony. I want you to go and take that audition. And I said, I don't want to, I don't know any of these excerpts. I know nothing. He said, if you don't take it, I'm never speaking to you again. So I had no choice.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did it. I got on the plane. I learned it best I thought I could. And he didn't help all that much, but I went and I remember walking in backstage and people were playing all around me. They knew this stuff. They really knew it. And I got out on stage and I didn't know what nerves were until that moment because I wasn't ready. I just wasn't prepared. And I got upstage. But man, you play one note in the concert hall like that and it sounded incredible. So when I came back, I guess it was a couple of years later. So I was at the beginning of my senior year. And when I was preparing for this one for the Philharmonic, I remembered that experience from Chicago and I thought, okay, well, I have to imagine that somebody, even if it's only one person, is going to know all of the technique, have all the notes in the right place, play everything in tune. They're going to play all the right dynamics. They're going to play all the right notes. What's going to give me a leg up? And it was what Jerry said earlier, I believe, which was, you've just got to play the music. You've got to speak to them. You have to make them come to you and play whatever this means. This can't just be notes that you're playing and you've got them right. It's got to be full of whatever it's supposed to be full of. Not all music has to be beautiful. Sometimes it's got to be rough and it's got to be, sometimes it's got to be fun and or sometimes it's got to be, depends what it is. But I just thought, all right, I'm going to do that. And that was that. And it seemed to work.
Korliss,
Just learn your part. In other words, learn the music as if you were learning anything else. That's the secret. Just know what there's no secret. Work hard.
Korliss, I know most of your career has been in opera, but you also, I know, have a wide range of interests vocally. So we've got a high school student that's determined they want to win a Tony Award on Broadway someday.
Me too.
And do some other things. And so what should that high school student be doing right now to be able to make that happen?
Most my students at Westchester last year were, they tended to lean with the musical theater aspirations. And that worked out really well. You still have to warm up. You still have to avoid vocal injury. And if they sing classical music theater like Rodgers and Hammerstein, you have to actually sing. Now, some of the new technique on Broadway, it's different. So how do you teach kids to get through that in a healthy way and not have a lot of nodes and hemorrhages and all that? So we spend a great deal of time talking about technique, and we work with classical technique. And then sometimes with Amara, I guess this last year, she would tell you that we ended up doing her warm-ups in Broadway, warming up chest voice, which is something, and of course the belt. They do belting, and opera doesn't belt, and classical music doesn't belt, or chamber music, except maybe once in a while. So, I can teach it. I know what to do. I know how to help these people do it in a really healthy way, a high belt with support, and never, not screaming. It's singing, not screaming, and trying to help the Broadway bound student understand that point of view. And I still stand by it, because the screamers, they sound great for 2 or 3 seasons, and then we don't hear from them much more on Broadway. They're gone. And a couple of names, which I would never mention, come to mind. So that's my goal right now with my younger students who love Broadway, is to really help them pursue that in a healthy way.
So, Ani, if a student has a goal of wanting to be able to be a music major at Yale School of Music, and they're an 11th grader, what should they be focusing on right now?
Well, I would say, first of all, make sure that everything is working properly with your hands, that you know how to draw a beautiful sound with the bow, you know how to get different characters, because music should have so many levels of sound and color. And when I listen to auditions, that's something I do listen for. Not just the fact that maybe things are in tune, which is good too, but does this person have an ear for a different color and character? And I believe, I even tell my students now, practice with the metronome, because I believe rhythm is important, especially if you're auditioning for orchestra, but to practice with your heart with the metronome. Play beautifully with the metronome. Play with character with the metronome. Don't just play with the metronome and be perfect. Totally useless to do that. But I think I tell them all to basically give it all that they can. I mean, again, what Becky and Jerry both said about, what wins auditions is not just perfection, but something that the listeners get from your musicality and with your ideas and with your intelligence. So teaching younger people, I have a couple of 18-year-olds now that I'm teaching because they're part of the Yale AMM program, which is incredible. And to have young people that are both incredibly talented and intelligent is like a dream come true for me, because I believe that I can really help them, whatever audition they're going to take. I feel I can do it now because I have how many years of experience? 35 years? I don't know. But I think that idea of taking auditions and knowing how to play for people and drawing them in, telling a story as you're performing, this is something they can learn now. And I think that it's important to develop that part of their playing, not just all the right things. They need that too, but they need to win an audition. You need that and that.
Can I add two small things?
Sure, Becky.
One is, this is something I learned. It was Kurt Mazur, actually, who used to talk about the poetry in the music. For God's sake, have you never been in love? Have you never, think about God? It was never just getting the notes out and you guys are not with you guys. And it was never that. It was always think about the poetry in the music. It's poetry, it's art. It's not just etudes. Etudes can be musical too. And the other story was, I'm not going to mention the instrument, but there was an audition jury that I was on listening to players. And it was down to 2 for an associate principal position. And both of them were excellent. One of them was flawless. The other one was not flawless, but I remember when we were talking about, all right, what do you think? And what do you think? When the jury was making their decision, and it came to me and I said, the thing is, when this person has to play a solo, would you rather hear a flawless solo or would you rather be moved and maybe miss a little bit of, this note, that note wasn't quite right, but it doesn't matter because when you're listening to music, this actually, somebody said this to me when I was auditioning for something. I was playing for somebody, a cellist. And I remember that I made a face because I missed a note or something. And he said, why are you making a face? And I said, by the way, we gave that position to the guy who was slightly less than perfect, but much more interesting to listen to. But when I was playing, I remember I made some kind of face and this cellist said to me, why are you making a face? And I said, well, didn't you hear that mistake I made, the dirt in my sound or whatever it was? And he said, no, when we're listening, when a jury is listening, when someone's listening to you, we're listening to the overall. We're not listening just for that mistake or that mistake. We're listening to how you're making us feel. We're making, to the whole thing. Don't make the mistake because if somebody else is also making them feel good and you make the mistake and they don't, they'll take, you know what I mean? But, no mistakes, but meaningful. How's that?
I should mention that Kurt Mazur one of the greatest conductors ever, had the good sense to have his son study music at the Music Conservatory of Westchester.
There you go.
I had to do a shout out for us there.
Yeah.
Listen, we should bring this to a close. This has been fantastic. But I want, if you have any kind of last thoughts before we wrap up, Jerry, you've been teaching a young prodigy-like cellist in our prep program last year. What has the experience been like for you?
Oh, Jazz, it's a joy to teach. He's just such a great kid, and he's a busy kid, as all kids are, and he doesn't always come in having practiced a huge amount, but as often as not he does. I mean, so it's different every week with Jad. But what I love about him is that it's impossible not to have a pleasant, interesting hour when together with him. And with obviously the vast majority of the people we work with, the people. And so we get this one-on-one, we get to connect with people, young people. And I find it's extremely important to me to impart and share with these young people how much I love music. And that they see that, and that I talk about it, and isn't this beautiful? Don't you just love this, right? Go home and go on YouTube and look for more of this. This is great, look and see what's out there, so that kids immerse themselves in this outrageously beautiful stuff that we have gotten to devote our lives to, and actually get paid for it until now.
I think this is, kids can learn from TED Talks. They can learn from the Maria Callas master classes. They can go online. They can be on YouTube. But nothing says it like a person in front of them, and communicating what Jerry's talking about. And also in my case, and in all of our cases, when you pick up your instruments and play for the kids, it's like, whoa. Yeah. Because that's when you learn, is when you hear the sound of your teachers, especially voice, and you're like, well, that's like a little microphone in here. And there's nothing like hearing it. And when they're like this singing, at lessons, and they understand it's an athletic activity. This is hook and honk and be in shape, and I think all my students are shocked at, when they stand next to me, the concentration of what I do and the concentration of sound and the intention of what I'm doing with communicating and the love of music and in your face. And with Zoom, I mean, this is the big challenge that we all have, is how can we do it in that way? And we can. I've been doing it, and I plan to continue doing it.
Yeah, Zoom has really, really improved, by the way. And in a few
months, has.
But in a few months, you're going to see even more, because I just tried a new program, and it's through Zoom, and it's going to be even better. So they're really working on quality for musicians. The talk has always been fine, but I've been doing a tremendous amount of Zoom teaching, and this last thing that just came up a few days ago, hopefully it'll come to everyone. I just tried it. It was a trial kind of program, and it's going to be great. There's
good news.
Yeah. We're going to all be so much happier teaching.
Can you share that at some point?
They told me I was absolutely silenced about sharing, because they're not ready, because they have to work out the bugs and the kinks and the whatever it is. But I believe it's very close to becoming real for all of us. I can't wait, because this summer has been, and up since March, I've been doing every bit of teaching online. And it was so frustrating at the beginning, and it's getting better and better. Yes. So I trust Zoom, and I believe we're all going to see something very good.
Good. Becky, any last thoughts?
I think that if you continue to practice, and I mean, there are times here, I call it my COVID lows. And my son just got married 2 days ago, and I was sort of, that whole week, I was sort of staring at the walls, like, how am I going to get this all done? And I hadn't touched my viola and everything. And every time I take it out and push through these old muscles, and all of a sudden I start to hear the old Jerry coming back. It just makes me feel better. And because, I play a lot. The Philharmonic works more than any orchestra, I think, in the world. And I'm serious. Sorry, more than the bed. From what I understand, you guys get bigger.
We'll talk.
All right. Whatever it is, I'm not in the competition. If you want it, you can have it. But anyway, we work a lot. And then, like I said, the chamber music and everything else that comes on. And so I thought, oh my God, a break. I want to get colleagues to come over, and so that we got paid, but I don't even forget the money. I want to stand on my front lawn, socially distanced with my friends. Hey, Jerry, you want to come down? I want to play chamber music. I just want to play.
Yeah.
Play too. And I just want to play. And that's this love that everybody's talking about, that we need to share. When we share, there's nothing better. When somebody said, that moment of realization when they get it, and they've gotten it, it's like, okay, that's my job. It doesn't have to be perfect now, but now you understand what I'm saying. Go home and practice it so that we don't have to talk about it again. It'll just, that's done. Let's move on to something else. It's a very exciting thing, but basically, we just want to play, and I'm sure you kids listening, even if you play at all, it's probably, go play for your neighbors. Go play for anybody you possibly can. Just stand outside on the front step and play, and you'll bring a lot of joy to people right now, because live music, there's nothing like it, and there's nothing it's not happening right now. So bring it wherever you can.
That's great. So the Music Conservatory of Westchester has been blessed to have a long relationship with Ani and her family. So, Ani, we'll have the last word from you.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, it's been a real blessing to have that place in our lives, because my son decided that he might want to play piano. So we took him to the conservatory and he took lessons. And that worked out for a couple of years. But then he fell in love with the cello. And we got him a Chinese cello, and we took him to the conservatory again. And that connection that we had, both with the teacher, with the conservatory itself, and I know I've done a couple of concerts for them, and have been involved very, very seriously with them. I believe in this organization, and I think it's a treasure to have, almost like in our backyard. I mean, it's 30 minutes away from my house, but it's so wonderful. It's vital. The people that run it, you guys are wonderful, and you care, and you have quality in mind, and that is the best.
Great, thanks, Ani. We do have a silent member of the panel I would like to recognize, and that is Dr. Jean Newton, who is our executive director, and sort of by default, the chief administrator for our prep program. So, Jean, thank you for hosting this and making everything happen for all of us that the conservatory is able to offer. So for anyone watching this at home and is interested in joining our program, the Music Conservatory has a link where you can apply or just get additional information on our website. It's not that hard to find. We'll be starting this year on September 14th. So if you're a serious student of flute, clarinet, violin, viola, cello, or voice, and you're going into 9th through 12th grade this year, we hope you'll apply and possibly take advantage of what really could be a life-changing experience as you continue to grow as a musician. This is really the start of what could be a great career for you. So thank you to all of our faculty members here. Mindy had to leave. Thank you to her too. And we'll be catching up with Pavel and Stefan. But for everyone, thanks for watching, and please stay safe. And I hope we'll all be seeing you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.